Hello everyone and welcome to SplitSecond. My name is Sequeira and I will be taking you through today's match. To celebrate reaching 4,000 subscribers, we will be randomly giving away a Watchtower 100. To win, all you have to do is pledge as a patron of any tier until the end of July. This box was graciously sponsored by our awesome LGS, Arena Porto. This is our first high-powered game played in person in a very long time. So please bear with us as we relearn to play paper magic and shuffle paper cards once again. We are very excited to be able to play in person once more, and fingers crossed this will be our format going forward. This week I brought back Kykar Prison, which is not a good omen for Luís, who is playing the extra degenerate Shadowbag Gitrog. Carneiro is playing Urza combo/stacks, and Baal is on Tymna Kraum Blue Farm, held as one of the best decks in EDH right now. It should be a fun game. Let's look into these starting hands. I won the die roll and will be going first. I kept a hand with Sculling Tarn, Windswept Heath, City of Brass, Ancient Tomb, Aven Mind Sensor, Deflecting Swat, and Will Kenrith. It's a little land heavy, but Mind Sensor can be very effective at stopping early wins, Deflecting Swat is one of the best interaction spells in EDH, and Will Kenrith is brutal against commander-centric decks like Urza or Gitrog. Luís kept Demonic Tutor, Mana Crypt, Bag of Holding, City of Brass, Mana Confluence, Bayou, and Summoner's Pact. This hand has Acceleration and 2 tutors. Demonic Tutor can fetch Necropotence, which combined with Bag of Holding can create disgusting plays. It's a very good hand. Carneiro kept Flusterstorm, Force of Negation, Saprazan Scary, Isochron Scepter, Basalt Monolith, Negate, and an Island. It's an interaction heavy hand, but it doesn't have a lot of gas. We'll see how that plays out for him. Finally, Baal has Intuition, Swamp, Silence, Gemstone Caverns, Arid Mesa, Grim Monolith, and Mox Opal. This hand can easily power out an early Crom, which should be very strong against the 2 other stacks players at the table, and Intuition can eventually set up some powerful plays. Let's get into this game. Although I'm starting, Baal has some pre-game action, so he puts Gemstone Caverns on the battlefield, exiling an Arid Mesa and putting a luck counter on the land. I play a Sculling Tarn, passing to Luís. He draws and plays a Bayou, then a Mana Crypt into Bag of Holding. He pays to loot immediately and pitches a Summoner's Pact. Then he passes. Carneiro plays a tapped Saprazan Scary and passes. On his end step, I fetch for a Rogrim Triumph, just in case Baal gets something like Ancient Tomb to threaten an Aven Mind Sensor. On his turn, Baal plays a Swamp and casts a Grim Monolith, followed by a Mox Opal. He then swats at his forehead. Had he exiled his Swamp instead of Arid Mesa, he could have cast Crom next turn, but he was playing around a possible Blood Moon or Back to Basics effects. I play an Ancient Tomb and tap it for an Azorius Signet, bumping my speed a bit, then pass. Luís loses the Crypt roll. He activates Bag of Holding again, pitching City of Brass this time. He plays a Mana Confluence and passes. Carneiro plays an Island and a Basalt Monolith, removing 1 depletion counter. This will mean a turn 3 Urza. Baal plays a Scrubland and taps out for Tymna, hoping to get some card draw in. I play a Windswept Heath and sack it for a Taiga. I cast Kykar and pass. On my end step, Luís casts Whirly Tutor and decides to fetch for an Underrealm Lich. Luís wins the Crypt roll. He plays Prismatic Vista and sacks it for a Swamp. He then taps out for the Lich, looking to fix his draws and abuse Gitrog triggers. He then passes. Carneiro plays a Misty Rainforest and sacks it for a Snow Island. He removes the last depletion counter from Saprazan to cast Urza, sacrificing this land. It resolves, getting him a Construct token. Then, he taps Monolith for an early Static Orb. You can feel the groans from all of us. Baal untaps Scrubland and Gemstone Caverns. Everyone played a blocker for Tymna, so he is forced to pass the turn. I untap both Tomb and Signet. Then, I play a Basic Plains and pass, having been forced to slow down. Luís untaps Bayou and Crypt and wins the Crypt roll. On his draw step, he looks at the top 3 and we have a little banter about interaction as he decides what to keep. Our main concern is the Gitrog. Luís accidentally reveals that there's a Veil of Summer there, because we asked what the card said and he read it without meaning to. He keeps the Veil in his hand, sending Scourge Familiar and Homeward Path to the graveyard. Then he passes. On his end step, Carneiro taps Static Orb for blue mana. Since Static Orb is tapped, Carneiro can begin his turn by untapping all of his permanents. So much for parity. He casts Ponder, draws, and then casts a Sol Ring. Baal untaps his Swamp and passes. On his end step, I flash in my Aven Mind Sensor, concerned about other people tutoring in response, but trying to spend my mana efficiently. Thankfully, no one responds to that. I untap Tomb and Signet once again. Then, I play a Flooded Strand and fetch, getting a Volcanic Island. I cast a Dockside Extortionist for 8 treasures. I spend 6 of those to cast a Will Kenrith. Kykar triggers, creating a Spirit. This is a big problem card for Urza, which is why it's there, who doesn't have a board that can pressure Planeswalkers. This could mean his commander gets locked out of relevance indefinitely. Carneiro fights with a negate. I respond with Deflecting Swat, creating another Spirit and changing Negate's target to Deflecting Swat, essentially countering it. Carneiro casts Force of Negation, exiling Tezzeret. I respond with an Ardcast Force of Will, triggering Kykar yet again, but Carneiro has the Flusterstorm, tapping his Static Orb for blue mana and ending the stack war. We both fear we may have left Luís in a favorable position, but Carneiro felt that Will Kenrith resolving would set him back too much. I, on my side, and knowing about the Veil of Summer, had very limited options to interact with Luís, hence going all in on this play. I attack Burn Down with Kykar and Mind Sensor and then pass. Luís can untap all of his permanents since Static Orb is now tapped. He forgot about this, otherwise he would have looted on my end step with the bag. He rolls for Crypt and takes 3 damage. On his draw step, he mills Birds of Paradise and Mausoleum Secrets to the Lich trigger. Luís plays the Command Tower and then casts Gitrog. Now that 2 players have emptied their hands, and he still has interaction for a possible removal spell, he feels a lot safer doing this. He passes, holding up mana for Veil of Summer. Carneiro begins by casting Time Twister, one of the reasons why he went all in. If this resolves, Luís will draw 7, replace each of those draws with the Lich's effect, and essentially look at 21 cards. He will also be drawing extra cards from each land that gets put into the graveyard as a result. This is especially dangerous since this Gitrog deck can go off at instant speed very easily. Baal has a bounce spell, but still knows about the Veil of Summer, so he starts by casting Silence, preventing Luís from interacting with his bounce spell. He is also preventing Carneiro from winning off of his Twister should he get lucky. Unable to protect Gitrog, Luís decides to exile the Veil of Summer to cast a Force of Vigor. He targets Grim Monolith and Basalt Monolith, which Baal taps in response. After Silence resolves, Baal casts Winds of Rebuke on Luís's Lich. It resolves and we all mill too. Luís hits a land, so he gets a Gitrog trigger for a draw. We finally resolve Time Twister. Carneiro can't cast any more spells, but he does draw into a Tabernacle, which he plays as his land for turn. In conjunction with Static Orb, this is devastating for me since I currently have 6 creatures out. Carneiro passes. Baal untaps Gemstone Caverns and Scrubland. He casts a Lotus Petal and follows it up with a Phantasmal Image, copying Luís's Gitrog. He follows that up with 2 fetch lands. There's still a Mind Sensor in play, so he holds on to them, hoping the 2 other players need it dead more than he does. I untap both Tomb and Triome, then sacrifice the spirits to generate mana and pay the Tabernacle tax on Mind Sensor and Kykar. I pay for a spirit with a Triome, letting Dockside die. I play an Arid Mesa, fetching a Tundra and cast Grand Arbiter Augustine IV. Carneiro thinks but lets it resolve. I follow it up with Blind Obedience, making this table equally annoying to everyone else. I attack Burn Down with a Spirit and pass. Luís untaps Bayou and Crypt and wins the Crypt roll. He pays 1 for Tabernacle to keep Gitrog, then sacrifices a basic swamp, drawing a card. He plays Mox Diamond, paying 1 more for Augustine and discarding Marsh Flats, getting another draw from Gitrog. Not too horrible, but not the best either. Luís then puts a Putrid Imp on the stack. Carneiro mana drains it. That is that. Luís plays a Windswept Heath and cracks it, drawing a card but failing to find a forest on the top 4. He then plays a City of Traders as his second land for turn before passing. Carneiro pays to keep Urza and the token. He plays a snow-covered island, then he plays Chrome Mox and doesn't exile anything since it can tap for blue with Urza anyway, although it does cost him 1 mana to cast. On his end step, Baal goes for the fetch with Scalding Tarn, drawing a card from his Gitrog but not finding anything. He then tries the same with his Windswept Heath, also drawing and failing to find. This Avon is indeed mind-censoring. Baal untaps Gemstone Caverns and Scrubland and taps them both to pay for the Tabernacle to keep his creatures. He sacrifices the basic Swamp to keep the Foggy Gitrog, drawing a card. Baal then plays an Exotic Orchard and an untapped Hallowed Fountain. He swings Gitrog at the Gitrog player for the extra irony. Luís takes 6 and Baal pays 1 to draw a card from Tymna. He then passes to me. I untap Tomb and Triumph and miscalculate the mana needed for the Tabernacle trigger, so I end up paying only 3 mana but sticking with 4 creatures. This is why I'm a designer and not a mathematician, guys. This spirit might influence the game just a tiny bit further along the way, but not enough to justify not showing you guys this cool match. I play a Scalding Tarn and pass, side-glancing that Tabernacle and Static Orb. Luís untaps Bayou and Crypt. He pays 1 for the Tabernacle to keep Gitrog, then sacrifices Mana Confluence, drawing a card and sparing himself some life. Luís then loses the Crypt roll. The longer the game goes, the worse this will be for him. On his main phase, Luís floats mana from the City of Traders. He plays a Gaia's Cradle, sacrificing the city and drawing a card from the Gitrog. He goes on to play a Dakmor Salvage, which is an unusual play for a Gitrog deck, but he can easily get it into his graveyard later on. Luís uses the floating colorless mana to cast Lion's Eye Diamond, which enters tapped. He uses the last floating mana and pays 2 life to cast Noxious Revival, targeting the Imp. The astute viewer will notice that, had Luís held the Dakmor and the LED and used Bag of Holding to draw the top card instead, he could have tried to win. However, the game's slugging was starting to tangle everyone's brains at this point, first with me failing at basic math, and now with Luís trying to wrap his head around how much hate remains on the battlefield. He passes the turn. Carneiro pays to keep Urza and the token. He plays a snow-covered island and passes. On his end step, I sack my Scalding Tarn for a basic island. Baal untaps Gemstone Caverns and the Fog Gitrog, taps Hallowed Fountain and Orchard for Tabernacle, and sacrifices Scrubland to the Gitrog trigger, drawing a card. On his main phase, he plays an island and an untapped Blood Crypt. This Gitrog has been used more by the farm deck than the Gitrog deck, mind you. Baal goes to combat and slaps Luís for another 6, adding insult to injury. He draws 1 from Tymna and moves to his hand step. At this point, I just flat out try to abrade the Static Orb. Carneiro responds with a Blue Sun Zenith for 3, confessing he did not have any interaction for us. Luís sighs in-game as he now realizes he could have indeed tried to win, but I refer to my abrade once again. The spell resolves and Baal discards a Mox Diamond during his cleanup step. Can we finally try and play some magic? I untap all my permanents, that feels good, and sacrifice 2 spirits and tap a plains to pay for the Tabernacle triggers. I play a basic mountain and cast a Jace the Mind Sculptor, just so that everyone calms down about me freeing the Gitrog's mana. After all, this is a good solution, and so the other 2 players let it resolve. I minus him to bounce Gitrog. Luís responds with Bag of Holding, drawing the Putrid Imp and discarding Necropotence, since he doesn't have the life to make it relevant. Next, I put a Chandra Torch of Defiance on the stack. Just so you know, I can try and really get ahead. This prompts a Force of Will from Baal, exiling Windfall. So much for that plan. I end my spellcasting with an Eidolon of Rhetoric. I go to combat, and not wanting to be the one who releases Luís from this game, I consign his fate to the Mana Crypt roll, leaving him alive at 3 life. Luís untaps and rolls for the Crypt. He takes 3 damage and dies. This is becoming a common theme on the channel. Carneiro pays for Tabernacle. He plays Buried Ruin, sacrifices it to get Static Orb back, and casts it. It's not as strong this time around, since it would enter tapped, giving everyone a full round before they have to worry about this card. However, Baal would be the one in the worst position since I have a billion lands and Carneiro is immune to the orb, so he decides to spell pierce it. Carneiro passes. Baal pays for Tabernacle with Hallowed Fountain and an island, that he sacrifices to Gitrog, drawing a card. Baal originally forgot to put the land into his graveyard, but we noticed that on his next turn, so no harm was done. He goes to combat and sends Gitrog and Tymna at Carneiro, who blocks Tymna with Urza while taking 6. Baal gains 2 life, and afterwards pays 1 life to draw a card from Tymna. On his second main phase, he plays Marsh Flats and casts Imperial Seal, searching for a card on his top 4. He sacrifices Marsh Flats, drawing this card and finding a Badlands. Success at last. On my upkeep, after I paid 5 for the Tabernacle triggers, Baal casts Red Elemental Blast on my Jace. Luckily, I draw Dak Faden, which I cast, extorting with Blind Obedience and triggering Kykar. I plus Dak, discarding Steam Vents and Possibility Storm, which can lock the board in conjunction with Eidolon of Rhetoric. I choose not to go this path, since I am 1 mana short of casting it this turn and everyone will have their stuff up next turn, whereas the other card I found is Card Advantage. Notice that I do shed a tear after having extorted for the first time since casting Blind Obedience and coming out of this 1 mana short for my next play. Carneiro pays to keep his Urza and a token. He then plays a Snow Island and a Sapphire Medallion. On his end step, I cast Omen of the Sea, scrying both to the bottom and drawing 1. I get a Spirit from Kykar. Baal pays for the Tabernacle triggers and sacrifices Blood Crypt to Gitrog, drawing a card. He attacks Carneiro again with his full Golgari commander, paying 1 life to draw from Tymna. He shocks himself with Godless Shrine and plays a Felwar Stone, which enters the battlefield tapped. On his end step, I sacrifice Omen of the Sea to scry 2, bottoming both. Save myself a bunch of crappy draws. I pay for Tabernacle and draw into Knowledge Pool, which I immediately cast because I'm getting too tired to consider the consequences. With Eidolon in play, this means no player can resolve any spells from their hands. It's not a total lock since Urza can still find things with his ability and combat can still happen, but right now I am still ahead on the board since I have Kykar making spirits, Blind Obedience draining, and Dak will eventually emblem. I can also break the lock whenever I want since Eidolon is a spirit and I can sacrifice him to Kykar in order to be able to play spells. Carneiro tries to respond with an Urza activation, which reminds us that his Sapphire Medallion should have entered play tap, so no, he can't do anything this turn. Knowledge Pool resolves, and we each exile the top 3. I plus Dak to loot, and then attack Carneiro with Kykar and Aven Mind Sensor to try and pressure his life total before they both turn on me. Then, I just pass. Carneiro pays for Tabernacle, plays a snow-covered island and spins Urza, revealing another snow-covered island. He goes to combat and swings the Construct at my Dak Faden. I chump with Grand Arbiter since he's not doing much of anything at this point. Carneiro passes to Baal. He pays for the Tabernacle and sacrifices Godless Shrine to Gitrog, drawing a card. He plays a Flooded Strand and a tapped Watery Grave as his lands for turn. After this, Baal goes to combat and swings Gitrog and Tymna both at Dak. I chump Gitrog with a Spirit and block Tymna with Eidolon. Baal gains 2 life and on his second main phase plays a tapped Crown. He passes. On my turn, I pay for Tabernacle and loot with Dak, discarding Basic Island and Winter Orb. I sacrifice Eidolon of Rhetoric to Kykar to make 1 mana and in the lock. That lasted long. I decide to put a Lavinia Azorius Renegade on the stack so that the lock becomes one-sided. Carneiro responds with a dramatic reversal. It gets exiled by the Knowledge Pool, and he chooses to cast Mana Drain on Lavinia and triggering Crown. Lavinia gets countered, and I then cast Felwar Stone, making a Spirit with Kykar and triggering Crown as well. Baal responds with Demonic Consultation. It gets exiled under the pool, and he casts Mystic Subdual instead, targeting Aven Mind Sensor to free his tutors. He also fetches with Flooded Strand, drawing a card from Gitrog and finding Tundra. I decide to cast Intuition with my Knowledge Pool trigger, finding Chrome Mox, Mana Vault, and Mana Crypt, so that I can get more gas onto the battlefield with Kykar. Carneiro gives me Mana Vault, which I cast, paying for the Extort and making a Spirit. I grab Gideon of the Trials from Knowledge Pool, paying for the Extort and making another Spirit. I zero Gideon to make an emblem and pass, hoping to have done enough. Carneiro pays for Tabernacle and, on his first main phase, he has 2 mana from Mana Drain, so he uses it to spin Urza, revealing Intuition. He casts it, finding Lotus Petal, Mox Opal, and Brainstorm. Baal gives him the Petal, which he casts, triggering Kraum once again. He then trades it for Psy, Master Thopterist. Carneiro plays a Flooded Strand, fetching for an island, and spins Urza, revealing another island. Urza sure hates lands. On his end step, Baal casts an Enlightened Tutor to grab a second Felwa Stone from My Knowledge pool. On his upkeep, Baal lets Tymna Kraum die to Tabernacle, and pays to keep just the faux Gitrog. He sacrifices the Badlands to the Gitrog trigger, getting a draw trigger, to which he responds with a Culling the Weak, sacrificing Gitrog and switching it for an Enlightened Tutor. The Tutor finds an Underworld Breach. The Gitrog trigger resolves, drawing him the Breach, and then Baal draws for a turn. He casts Underworld Breach, getting Dramatic Reversal from the Knowledge pool. He untaps all of his artifacts, gaining some mana. Baal then casts Rite of Flame, exiling it and choosing to cast Underworld Breach instead. Spells cast with Underworld Breach are not cast from the hand and won't be exiled to the Knowledge pool, effectively allowing him to maneuver my stacks with ease. Baal then feels like casting Intuition like everyone else has. Well, except for the deceased Luís. However, this is a winning one. It finds him a Thassa's Oracle, Lion's Eye Diamond, and a Dockside Extortionist. I decide to give him the Dockside, which he casts and swaps for a Grand Abolisher from the Knowledge pool. Baal then casts Chain of Vapor, which becomes the Dockside Extortionist, entering play with 7 treasure tokens. The game's nearing its closure. He casts Wheel of Fortune, which becomes Culling the Weak, sacrificing Dockside and making 4 black mana. Most importantly, both Culling the Weak and the Dockside are now in his graveyard as well. Baal casts Lion's Eye Diamond with Underworld Breach and sacrifices it for 3 blue, discarding his hand. This includes a Brain Freeze. Baal is now able to Brain Freeze himself, milling more and more cards each time, which allows him to cast Lion's Eye Diamond again and again with the Underworld Breach. This gives him access to nearly all of his deck in his graveyard and makes a lot of mana. More importantly, it lets Baal bounce my Gideon with a Cyclonic Rift once he mills it. As soon as he has no cards on his library, Baal goes ahead and casts Thassa's Oracle, winning the game. Thanks for following us through this match, everyone. In the end, the Oracle foresaw Baal's victory. We'd like to start the credits by thanking our current patrons, and especially Izanagi, Stefan, TJ Rapp, Mike Purr, Ajimo, and Iglegal, our stack breakers. If you want to support us, you can do so by liking this video, subscribing, or becoming a patron yourself. We'd also like to thank our LGS for sponsoring us with a really cool Watchtower 100 to give away to one of our patrons once August starts. Become a pledge to enter. If you want to go through other Commander adventures, click one of the videos on the right. If you want to talk with us about our games or other EDH related matters, join us on Discord. Come with us again next week for a new set of Commanders and more decisive plays. See you all then.